Okay, with that quick introduction, let's move on to our first key issue, which is what is modern EDI and why is it important? So let's begin by comparing what we might call classic EDI, which is still a part of the larger set of requirements addressed by modern EDI. And classic EDI is characterized, first of all, by the exchange of standard electronic document types with syntax and semantics that are defined by standards organizations, principally EXTOL and EDIFACT. Modern EDI embraces those same standard documents, but also supports the interchange of non-standard proprietary documents, mostly based on XML flat file and spreadsheet syntaxes. The next difference is that classic EDI focused on communications primarily through vans in the old days, but also some direct connections. Modern EDI also includes those cases, but more and more is focused on point-to-point connections with partners over the internet using protocols like FTP, Secure FTP, and AS2. With classic EDI, integration with applications and data was implemented using programming primarily. So in addition to configuring the EDI system and how it should behave, you also needed to code interfaces to the applications and data from which data was sent in the outbound direction to partners, and also to accept data sent inbound from partners. In contrast, modern EDI interfaces with applications and data using configured plug-in adapters. And frequently that's aided by intelligent automation. An example of that is a database adapter might have the ability also to, in addition to insert, update, and delete rows in a database, might also have the ability to listen for database activity and automatically generate processing based on the occurrence of database events. The next difference is that classic EDI is primarily asynchronous and batch-oriented. So maybe once or twice a day, EDI transactions would be sent and received. Whereas modern EDI also includes batch, but more and more includes synchronous near real-time interactions. A good example of that, for example, in the trucking industry, is near real-time response to load tender messages. In classic EDI, it was very difficult typically to locate information and especially information needed to process exceptions. But also usually IT was saddled with the job of producing custom reports anytime information that couldn't be satisfied with a standard report was needed by a business department. Whereas with modern EDI, it's very much focused on management by exception, and dashboards and self-serve reporting capabilities and automated alerts all make it easier and for customers to get, for business professionals to get the information they need, and also offloads a lot of burden from IT to provide those requirements on a one-off basis. And finally, classic EDI pretty much was isolated from other types of integration, like application-to-application integration or enterprise data integration. Today, modern EDI is part of a larger framework that includes data and application and cloud integration. So it's no longer true that you go out typically and buy an EDI-only solution. Today, most vendors offer a solution that can handle a variety of integration requirements. Now, whether your company uses on-premise EDI software or subscribes to an EDI processing service, there are some common services that manage mediations, which are things like mediations, for example, activate processes based on the arrival of data from a partner in the inbound direction, for example, or might activate a process in the outbound direction based on the occurrence of database activity, but also handle things like de-enveloping and message routing and so on. So mediation services, process automation, which handles execution of automated processes that combine communication event activities with data transformation tasks and notification tasks and other kinds of processing that you want to occur together. And then there's data transformation services that not only translate data, but also validate data, make sure it's correct before translation occurs, enriches data by looking up and substituting data from external sources, routing data based on data content, and other things. And then finally, connection services, which manage the communication with external partners, but also connections with on-premise applications and data, and also with cloud applications. So examples would be communication services for FTP or AS2 in terms of business-to-business integration, but also connections with databases, applications, and file systems on-premise. Now, the emergence of modern EDI occurred about 15 years ago when solutions began to appear that extended those services to other integration requirements, like exchanging non-standard document types with trading partners, or integrating applications on-premise, or extracting and transforming enterprise data for reporting and business intelligence purposes, and more recently, integrating cloud-based software as a service applications. And in addition to extending those core services, modern EDI solutions make it far easier to manage your EDI environment, you can see on the left, and also to monitor EDI activity and report on EDI results, which you can see on the right. Now, not all of the solutions that offer these kinds of services come from EDI vendors, however. So there are still substantial differences in EDI implementation capabilities and processing and management between solutions on the market today. So it really pays to look at the details when you're evaluating a modern EDI solution. Nevertheless, modern EDI solutions are a big improvement over the solutions that were available 10 years ago. And because they avoid or make it easier for businesses to cope with the issues that we talked about a few minutes ago, you gain substantial benefits from using a modern EDI solution, like the ability to automate integration with partners using non-standard documents, to support multiple kinds of integration, to achieve tighter processing windows, monitor and manage everything from a single location, reduce cost and respond faster to exceptions, and integrate more rapidly with partners and applications and data without specialized skills, and thereby get new partners on board faster, get changes to existing partner connections implemented faster. Okay, so that's sort of a quick definition of what we mean by modern EDI and EDI modernization. So let me turn to the second key issue, which is what factors you should consider, what questions you should try to answer as you plan your EDI modernization. And the first question is, what is it that you need to integrate? And this diagram shows a number of possibilities, both business-to-business kinds of integration and internal kinds of integration, cloud integration, based on a variety of different document types. So if you look at these and other examples of the kinds of integration that you need, not just today, but looking forward as far as you can go in the future, that's the first sort of criterion that you can establish in your modernization plan is, what options do I have for solutions that handle all of the integration requirements that I have. The second question to answer is how you want to implement. So historically, different middleware solutions were marketed for different purposes, like EDI translation and data integration and more recently cloud integration. And for most businesses, those kinds of sort of point solutions pose two big problems. The first one we've already talked about, which is that it takes multiple point solutions to cover all of the integration requirements in a typical business, and that means supporting multiple product environments, paying for multiple licenses and maintenance, and keeping IT skills current for all of those different solutions in your business. But an even bigger problem is that each point solution comes with its own set of tools and user interfaces and APIs and best practices and learning curves. And especially when programming is required, it can greatly lengthen the amount of time that it takes to put in place or to maintain, modify, and enhance an existing integration connection. So what really is required and what is sort of the focus of modern EDI is are solutions that are able to address all of the requirements that we see here with one investment in middleware and tools and skills, and hopefully one that also eliminates the need to program to the back end, on-premise applications and data. And you can't necessarily assume that because you're looking at a solution that addresses multiple integration requirements that it does eliminate programming. So one very important question is, how do you want to implement? Do you want to implement using a combination of coding and middleware, or instead do you want a solution that allows you to get rid of that coding and integrate with applications and data directly using adapters? Now, the next question to answer is, how do you want to provision your solution? And there are two main options. One is to locate software on premise, and that's what we see at the bottom of the diagram below the firewall. The other is to co-locate or host on some cloud service your integration solution. And one of the big distinctions that is important to make is how easy it is to integrate between these two provisioning options, to integrate with on-premise applications and data. So, for example, if you have EDI, let's say, orders coming in from customers, or for whatever reason you want to get those orders into your ERP system quickly, maybe you've got some service level agreement that requires turnaround within a specific window with an order response. The ability to integrate directly with ERP systems is different between these two solutions. You can see the dotted lines connecting the co-located integration middleware at the top with applications and data at the bottom. What that represents is the fact that either you need to connect with some integration software on premise to mediate that integration, or you need to use secure protocols like FTP or AS2, and then implement some sort of programmed or scripted integration with those services. So there's usually some additional effort required to implement integration in the cloud, unless you have sort of a hybrid solution where you combine co-located cloud-based integration software with integration software on premise. So again, a very important question: how do you want to provision? And then the last question really is, what lifecycle processes do you want to own? So especially if you're a small company, but also in the case of some large companies where everyone has limitations on the IT resources they have available to solve business problems, and perhaps your company's decided that outsourcing EDI management, implementation and management makes sense for you so that you can focus IT resources on other business requirements. So if you choose to outsource all or part of your EDI operation, and you can see up in the upper left there's a checklist of possibilities there. The question is, okay, do you want to own the process of provisioning, meaning installing and managing your EDI environment? Do you want to own the process of implementing, meaning not just onboarding partners initially, but also making changes to partner connections as new documents and versions and application connections and so on are introduced? Do you want to own the process of monitoring and operating your EDI environment, handling exceptions? And then finally, the process of maintenance and upgrades, not just to the EDI software, but also, again, to the EDI integrations that you implement. That has to be done by somebody. You can choose to outsource that, or do it in-house. So there are a variety of possibilities here. It's important to really look at all of these areas before you figure out exactly how to move forward with your own modernization plan. All right, let's move on to the third key issue, which is what sourcing, deployment, and licensing options should you think about? So what I've done here is I've put together sort of five situations that we most commonly see in terms of how our customers like to implement. And the first one is sort of the most traditional option, which is self-managed EDI on-premise using a product like ours, which is independent of the applications that you have running on-premise. So we see the integration middleware sitting behind the firewall, connecting to applications and data as needed. And then outside the firewall, we see connections to external partners and external applications, meaning, in this case, cloud applications, software as a service applications, for example. So this option is really well suited to just about any integration requirement because it allows you to do end-to-end integration for external integration cases, but also internal integration as well. It handles multiple integration requirements. partner-specific integration needs, and best-of-breed application strategies, meaning that if you source your application software from multiple vendors, or perhaps have your own in-house software in addition to using commercial software, that's a case where using this kind of solution makes sense. Now there's a variation on this, which is hosting or locating integration middleware behind your firewall, but engaging with an integration service provider to manage all or part of your EDI operation. And again, if you recall that checklist, that can mean everything from installing your EDI software and managing it to implementing your EDI integrations with partners, to monitoring daily activity, and so on. And this is best fit for pretty much the same set of integration cases we saw in the first option, plus, but it's mostly suited again to small companies with smaller non-existent IT staffs, companies that are looking for temporary project assistance, and cases where staff augmentation is needed. So, for example, if you might only have one person who is hired to manage EDI, but you've got a big project to onboard a bunch of trading partners. In that case, you might engage with an integration service provider to get over the hump with those onboarding tasks, and then revert to your single EDI coordinator to manage the environment from that point on. The next option is purchasing application-specific middleware. Now, there are a lot of application providers out there these days, principally the larger ones like SAP and Oracle, that offer their own integration capabilities as options with their software. And these are obviously well suited for integration with their own applications. Sometimes not so well suited, though, for integration with other applications, depending on what other applications you have in-house. So this kind of solution is best fit for, first of all, standard B2B integration cases. A lot of these application-specific products provide good support for standard EDI, for example, but not so good support for the kind of proprietary documents that some of your customers or other partners might require. Good for homogeneous application environments. Again, sometimes not so good for environments that include applications that aren't supported or aren't well supported by the application-specific solution. And finally, it's good for cases where you have a long-term commitment to a particular application vendor, perhaps have plans to acquire additional modules for that vendor. So it can certainly make sense in a case like that. The next option is to host integration middleware either on cloud or on some co-located vendor site. And what we see here is sort of a combination. I mentioned before that if you do use integration middleware service in the cloud, one of the challenges that you have is integrating between that integration middleware and your on-premise applications and data. So either you need some sort of integration middleware on-premise to sort of handle that last mile integration, or you need to do that through programming or some other means. I mean, it is possible to do translation in the cloud, for example, to a specific application format. Sometimes you need to pay your integration service provider extra to get exactly the document versions that you need. But at some point, once you get that data, let's say in the inbound direction, somebody needs to push that data into the application. And in the outbound direction, somebody needs to take data produced by the application and send it up to your cloud-based integration service provider. So this is best fit for this particular configuration is best fit for partner integration. Some cloud application integration cases, depending on what kinds of SaaS application interfaces are supported. If it's hosted on a cloud platform that provides elasticity, it can be also a good solution when you have seasonal peaks in your business, for example, holiday shopping peaks. It could be good also for temporary deployment if you're managing it in-house and also testing. This is the same as the previous case, only now we're looking at the same configuration, but managed by an external software as a service provider. So pretty much the same use cases are well suited to this as the previous slide, but also especially so if you have a small IT staff or you're a small company with very limited resources. All right, just to summarize this key issue, the key decisions that you need to make in your modernization plan are how you want to provision, what kind of licensing approach you want, and I will say that it used to be the case that subscription-based licensing was sort of joined at the hip with software as a service. In other words, if you subscribe to a cloud-based service, it was automatically a subscription-based pricing model. Subscription pricing is also available these days for on-premise applications, so this isn't the roadblock that it used to be if you're looking for subscription-based pricing on-premise. You need to also think about how you want to implement and how you want to operate. And there are a few key takeaways that I think are really important to understand here. The first is that the way that you want ownership to work for lifecycle processes, for example, whether you do the implementation or an implementation service provider does it, whether you do operations or the service provider does it, it's largely independent of whether you provision on-premise or in the cloud. In other words, you can make those two decisions independently. Second, if you are interested in provisioning on the cloud, the main reasons for doing so are mainly how you want to, whether or not you want to own the software license or subscribe sometimes, how you'd like to provision, whether you want to outsource provisioning on a particular cloud platform. Now that's not just the software, I'm including hardware there as well. So in some cases maybe you don't have hardware to deploy an integration solution, an EDI integration solution on in-house, so it might make sense to do that in the cloud. And also lifecycle preferences, like how you want to access information about your EDI environment, how you want to deploy EDI. Sometimes there are differences there that might motivate you to go on cloud or on premise. But use case advantages are not among them. In other words, there aren't things that you can do on cloud that you cannot do on premise. So functionally, actually on-premise solutions generally have a slight edge when it comes to the flexibility, the kinds of integration you do, because they have direct access to local resources. And finally, last mile integration, which I talked about a couple of times, is really an important overlooked requirement if you choose to deploy on cloud. So I'm not suggesting that on-cloud integration is a bad idea. We certainly support hosted integration amongst our solution options, but you need to make sure that you have some way to integrate with applications and data on-premise, particularly if you have tight turnaround requirements or tight service level requirements. All right, let's get on to the final key issue, which is how can you get there from here? And I want to just quickly summarize a few modernization strategies and then talk about some of the key capabilities to look for. The first modernization strategy is to keep your legacy system in place, stabilize it, and bring in a modern EDI solution to implement new integrations and to modify existing ones. So anything that comes in new, any new partners you need to onboard, you use a new technology for that. And when changes, particularly major changes, have to occur with existing partner integrations, it's also probably a good idea to implement those in the new technology. Whoops, I put up two of them. The second option is really to phase in modern technology by replacing legacy EDI implementations partner by partner. This is probably the most common strategy that we see. So if you have, let's say, 100 or 200 or 500 partners, EDI partners, it doesn't make sense, obviously, in most cases, to replace all those connections at the same time. So generally, you work through partners a group at a time, perhaps based on common document usage, and then over time, over the period of some time, based on the resources and time you have available to do it, you ultimately replace all of your partners from the legacy system, and you can get rid of that. The third option is to replace hosted legacy translation with modern technology, and then later replaced the last mile integration, which in many cases is programmed from years ago, in a second phase. So in this case, we're sort of attacking the modernization problem in layers, focusing first on the partner-facing aspect of integration, and then later the application and data-facing aspect of it. And the fourth option is to do everything en masse. Now, usually, as I mentioned, this is not a good idea, particularly if you have a lot of partners, but sometimes, especially if you have a platform change. Let's say you're moving from a legacy risk platform to Windows or Linux, and you need to get rid of the old platform. It may even be a platform you have on lease, so there's a deadline involved there. In that case, you may not have an alternative then to doing everything en masse. So it's important, especially in this case, to make sure that you plan carefully, that you also perhaps bring in some assistance from your integration vendor, because they have experience with these things and can probably tell you about things to look for in your planning that you might not think about, and can also provide assistance in the actual migration itself. So some success factors, some things to look for. First of all is to make sure, this is sort of an obvious point, but that the EDI modernization solution that you choose, whether it's a software product or a service, supports the current integration requirements that you have. For example, those proprietary document types that important customer wants you to support, but also any future integration requirements that you can foresee, so that you don't have to go through yet another modernization exercise 2 years down the line. Second, it's really important to invest time in doing a thorough inventory of your existing EDI environment, and also to developing templates. Now, integration partners can frequently provide templates, as we can, for common business integration cases. But also think about what your reuse strategy is in using those templates and reusing as much of your investment as possible as you onboard additional partners. So, for example, you could target an initial partner that for which you need a standard EDI order, invoice, ship notice, maybe order change, and some other documents. And then as you build that, you do so using templates so that you can make minor changes in onboarding subsequent partners that use those same document types. Third is to look for the ability to generate integration objects for faster time to production. And this is where there's some very significant differences between EDI modernization solutions. This is the tool side. This is the design time part of the EDI solution. So there are tools out there like ours that allow you to generate most of your implementation, not just for EDI, but for other cases as well. Things like generating partner definitions and document definitions for EDI and XML and flat file and spreadsheet documents and so on. Generating acknowledgments from specifications, generating adapters from specifications, generating mapping rules and reusing mapping rules and mapping patterns. So there are a lot of places where you can save huge amounts of time by making use of some of the automation capabilities built into good EDI, modern EDI tools. And finally, I mentioned this a minute ago, employing vendor services as appropriate to shorten your learning curve, make sure you've got a good plan in place for your migration, and also assist with the migration itself if that's needed to reduce time to production or to hit a deadline for finalizing your migration. Okay. Before we get to the Q&A, I just want to take 3 or 4 minutes to talk about our solution. I've sort of talked in general so far about things to think about and options to think about in modernizing EDI. We have a product which you can see depicted here called EXTOL Business Integrator, which is a modern EDI solution. It can be used to replace, in fact, that's probably most of the cases we see these days, is to replace an older EDI translator solution with this product that not only handles EDI but other kinds of integration as well, and put you in a situation where you can not just accommodate new requirements that perhaps your existing solution can't accommodate, but also handle new requirements that come down the line. And you can see here it allows you to communicate outside your firewall with customers, suppliers, service providers, cloud applications, but also the same solution allows you to integrate applications not just with partners but with each other and enterprise data, and it provides all of the capabilities that we talked about earlier, including a modern dashboard that you can provide to business professionals in your company for self-service. The architecture of our product is based on principles of reuse. So there's a fairly there's a standard set of object types that you build in doing EDI implementations, web service implementations, application integration implementations that all share the same kinds of components. Typically, they're based on a business process with adapters, data transformation tasks, and other tasks like notifications, sending emails, and so on. And the idea behind the architecture is to build systems using building blocks, and also to make use of template capabilities built into the product so that you can define sort of a common approach to particular situations like partners that share certain document types or processing requirements, and then use that template to stamp out multiple instances of that kind of business process for other kinds of partners. A quick look at the capabilities provided with the solution. At the bottom here we can see the server, the runtime server, which is EXTOL Business Integrator Server, and it includes all the services that we looked at before that are required by a modern EDI solution. It also includes supporting infrastructure like a dashboard server, a repository server for all of your integration objects, and a web server for interacting using web services. And you can see the dashboard. There's a web-based dashboard capability that's used to monitor and report on all the activity in the server environment. The companion to that runtime environment is called EXTOL Integration Studio. This is a set of design time tools that run on Windows and Linux. And you use these tools to do things like set up your project, generate schemas, generate partner definitions, generate mapping rules, configure adapters, and so on. So you go through sort of a typical series of steps that ends in a solution that can be run directly on the platform. And what you end up with is what you see in the green boxes. So those are examples of custom integration processes that might do EDI integration, web service integration, non-standard business-to-business integration, application integration, and so on. So you get with this solution everything that you need to handle all the cases you see here. The last thing I want to touch on before we get to our Q&A session is the degree of flexibility that we built into the way that we offer our solution. So we offer various ways to slice and dice the capabilities. So if you have just an application-to-application integration project and you're not concerned for the time being with partner integration, you can acquire just the capabilities you need for that. Or if you're doing strictly EDI modernization and all you're worried about is B2B integration, you can acquire just the capability to do that, and so on. We allow you to select based on the kinds of document syntaxes that you need. You can acquire the software either on a purchase basis or a lease basis. We offer multiple platforms. You can locate it behind the firewall or host it. I mentioned the operating system environments we support, which include IBM i. And we provide a wide variety of services for deployment, implementation, operations, and ongoing management. So the key here is that whatever your requirement is, we have a way to address it with various ways to license and provide services around your solution. And if your circumstances change or you decide to change your mind later on about how you'd like to operate your EDI system, you can change your mind and change these options at any time. Okay, now we've hit the end of our prepared material, and I'd like to get into the question and answers. Okay, it's a question asking for more information about mediation. So I talked earlier about the ability to trigger EDI and other integration processes based on external activities, events basically. So their question is, can you give a couple of examples of triggering integration processes based on file and database activities? Yeah. Well, okay, so for database activities, typically the triggering occurs when you have a need to integrate on a near real-time basis with an application that whose activities can be detected through a database interface. So if an order is posted, for example, to a database by an ERP, you can monitor the table or set of tables used by the ERP that are used for posting that order. And then as soon as that transaction hits the database, we have a database monitor feature that's included with the product that picks that up and allows you to direct the data from that transaction to an integration process that's designed to handle it. And that process can do virtually anything you want to. It can generate a response to the order and send it out to a partner. It can pass it off to a warehouse management system. It can update a database table. You have no limitations virtually on what you can do once that event has triggered and your process takes control. The same kind of capability exists for file systems, and so for example, if a file is created, you can monitor the directory that file is expected to appear in, and when it appears, trigger processing for that file. And that might occur when it's, let's say the file could be saved by somebody explicitly updating a spreadsheet and saving it, or it could be created as a byproduct of application processing, posting a set of orders, for example. Or it could be created, let's say, when an FTP process completes and the file, an inbound file, is stored in a directory. So those are examples of where we can trigger processing based on file activity detection. Okay, let's see. All right, so here's a question about the dashboard. Is the dashboard appropriate to give to my customer service representatives to track functional acknowledgments on invoices and ship? Okay, all right, so yeah. So the basic question is, if I want customer service reps to monitor activity with their assigned customers, can they use the dashboard to do that? Yeah, the answer is yes. The dashboard is web-based, so anybody with a standard browser can access it, and there's a standard set of reports that we provide to do things like monitor transaction activity by partner, monitor the life cycle of documents based, for a particular order cycle. So, for example, you can look up invoices associated with orders or ship notices associated with orders, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of these reports that are built into the dashboard. And yes, they are appropriate for exposing to your customer service representatives. And by the way, you can also restrict who gets access to each kind of report. So you can choose exactly what each person has access to through the dashboard. Okay. All right, here's the next question is, if I were to create an EDI purchase order with your product, could I also create an Excel-based version that participates in the same business process? Yeah, I didn't talk much about spreadsheet processing earlier, but spreadsheets, and by that I mean the .xls and .xlsx, I think it is, the XML version of Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. We support both of those formats for both reading and writing. So there are a variety of ways that you could use that. You could, for example, process spreadsheets extracted from applications, either SaaS applications or in-house applications, or you can generate spreadsheets, for example, containing product catalogs or pricing information. An interesting approach that we've seen in several customer cases is using spreadsheets as standard document formats for accepting orders and passing order status information and acknowledgments and so on, using standard spreadsheet templates. So if you have, typically occurs with very small companies or offshore partners who don't have their own, don't have sophisticated IT facilities. You can use spreadsheets as sort of a poor man's version of EDI. Now, you don't, of course, get all the advantages of EDI because there's a lot of envelope information and other advantages that EDI offers that make the interchange process very robust. But you can automate the process of sending and receiving the basic transaction data using spreadsheets. Next question. How much time is required to integrate a new trading partner with EXTOL? Good question and very difficult to answer. It depends on a lot of factors. Let me just mention a few of them. First of all, it depends on whether you have a template or a set of reusable objects for another partner that you've already implemented that you can reuse when onboarding the new partner. And that's frequently the case. I mean, you know, if you're using, even if you're not using exactly the same version of an order document, for example, standard EDI order document, we have tools in our product that can allow you to take that, the map for that, let's say, older or newer version, and create a variation of that same map for a different version of that same EDI document in an automated fashion. That's called the Migration Assistant, and it's a very useful tool for conversions once you have an example or two of something you want to do. Other factors include, you know, obviously if the partner has proprietary documents that you've never seen before, then there's not going to be an existing map that you can use to reuse to onboard that partner. So there are cases like that where we do provide some automation support in the tool to make the process, the implementation and onboarding process go faster, like the ability to create document definitions from metadata or data examples, like the ability to generate rules based on similarities between source and target documents. We have actually a very sophisticated mapping feature called Smart Mapping that allows you to generate mapping rules for some usually large percentage of the source and target associations in your maps, and then complete the rest through drag and drop mapping after that. So that's a case, that particular case is probably the worst case where you have a partner with completely one-off requirements. But in most cases, I'll just cite a couple of extremes. We have customers who tell us it takes them a half hour to implement a new partner if it's very similar to one they already have. And if it's a case where you have, let's say, 3 or 4 document types that are brand new that you've never seen before, it might take you several days or a week, something like that, to implement. Okay, the next one is about licensing. Does the initial license for your product, oh, okay. So the basic question is, how much flexibility do you have to acquire a license for our product for a particular integration requirement, like, let's say, processing XML documents, and then expand the capabilities of your license later on as you encounter additional requirements? Yeah, the answer is yes. We provide quite a bit of flexibility. I did mention, I think, that one of the licensing options we offer is the ability to license by document syntax. So, for example, if you have a customer who wants you to integrate some one-off XML documents, then you can acquire just the XML transformation capability, and that allows you to integrate to transform XML to or from any of the other syntaxes that we support. So that includes, you know, flat file spreadsheets, databases. Actually, the EDI capability is a separate capability, but you can do at least XML to flat file database spreadsheet in any either inbound or outbound, just with the XML option. And later on, if you decide that you need to support spreadsheets or you want to add the EDI capability, we can simply turn that capability on with the new license key. If you have any other questions that you'd like to have us answer for you, you can email us at info@extol.com. You can give us a call at the number you see on the screen there, or obviously find us through the website